Sometimes we have moments when we see things in the present with startling clarity. But if you're like me, it's usually only well after the fact that things come fully into focus. My sense of call to ministry, for example, involves a journey of years from early adolescence until a year or two after college. Once I accepted the fact that I was called into ministry, I could look back on a whole string of events spread out over the course of about 10 or more years that finally hit me with a complete sense of clarity about my call. In the middle of it, I just thought of each event as a random event in life. But after the fact, I could string them together like pearls on a necklace and see with absolute clarity that they were all interrelated and had been pushing and nudging me toward ministry even when I wanted to go in another direction. Today's story from the Revised Common Lectionary is much the same. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Saturday, March 9th, 2024. The 3-year lectionary cycle generally has us read through one of the Synoptic Gospels each year, with the Gospel of John inserted at various places along the way throughout the year. This year we are in year B of the 3-year cycle, which means we are reading through the Gospel of Mark this year. So on Palm Sunday, the Gospel reading for the Liturgy of the Palms is the story of Jesus' entry into Jerusalem as recorded in Mark. But in year B, the lectionary lists for Palm Sunday a story also from John as an alternate reading. Since we will be reading the Palm Sunday narrative from Mark on Palm Sunday this year, I thought I would finish out this week of reading through the Gospel lessons for Lent by pausing to reflect on John's version of the story. Now, the Gospel of John ordinarily tells longer, more detailed stories about the life and ministry of Jesus than the other Gospels do. For example, John's version of the Last Supper takes 5 full chapters, while the other Gospels tell it in a few verses. But John's version of Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday is uncharacteristically brief, even terse. The essential details are there: the crowds, the palm branches, the donkey, the shouts of Hosanna. But John includes a detail that sets his version apart. We read, "The next day, the great crowd that had come to the festival heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem. So they took branches of palm trees and went out to meet him, shouting, 'Hosanna! Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel.' Jesus found a donkey and sat on it, as it is written, 'Do not be afraid, daughter of Zion. Look, your king is coming, sitting on a donkey's colt.'" His disciples did not understand these things at first, but when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered that these things had been written of him and had been done to him. Although the lectionary reading doesn't include the next few verses, the story continues. So the crowd that had been with him when he called Lazarus out of the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to testify. It was also because they heard that he had performed this sign that the crowd went to meet him. The Pharisees then said to one another, "You see, you can do nothing. Look, the world has gone after him." Notice what John has done here. What John does here is subtly shift the focus from Jesus himself to the reactions of 3 different sets of people: the crowd, the disciples, and the Pharisees, each looking in a different direction in time. The crowd is totally in the moment, shouting their hosannas. The disciples look back on the episode from later on. The Pharisees look forward in time to what their options are. Obviously, I can't unpack all 3 perspectives, so let's just consider the disciples' perspective for a brief moment. We cannot get into the minds of the disciples, of course. The Gospels present them mostly as sort of 2-dimensional characters, sort of a supporting cast to the lead actor, Jesus. But occasionally the Gospel writers will help us out. John's Palm Sunday narrative does just that. He hints that while they witnessed Jesus' entry into Jerusalem, it was only later, after his glorification, that they were able to understand the meaning and importance of the event. It's easy to imagine what the disciples experienced and perhaps even thought during Jesus' lifetime. He was a charismatic leader, teacher, healer. They followed him throughout his ministry. Did they understand what it all meant in each moment? Almost certainly not. The Gospels are all clear that it is impossible to fully understand who Jesus really is apart from his crucifixion and resurrection. By definition, the disciples were with him in his ministry before he was crucified, resurrected, and ascended into heaven. They could not have fully understood what it was all about until later, perhaps even much, much later. But that's what John's after, isn't it? It's a reminder to us that we simply cannot understand who Jesus is apart from the resurrection. It is only looking back through the lens of the empty tomb and through the lens of the cross that we see Jesus for who he is. Turns out to be a great way to begin Holy Week. When we return next week, we're still 2 weeks out from Holy Week, so we'll walk through the story of Esther. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.